July 1st, 1916, Atlantic Ocean, off the New Jersey coast. The sea was calm that morning. A warm breeze rolled over the waves, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed toward the distant shore. The fishing boat Providence rocked gently on the surface as Captain Joseph Murphy wiped sweat from his brow. He had been on the water since dawn, casting his nets and hoping for a good haul before returning to the docks in Beach Haven. A flicker of movement beneath the waves caught his eye. He leaned over the side, peering into the deep green water. Schools of fish shimmered in the light, darting away. Something larger moved among them, something fast. Murphy frowned. He had been fishing these waters for over 20 years, and he had seen his share of sharks, but something about the way this one moved sent a chill down his spine. A sudden splash startled him. Then his net, weighted with the morning's catch, jerked violently. The boat tilted. "What in God's name?" Murphy grabbed hold of the railing, his heartbeat quickening. He watched as the net, full of writhing fish, was pulled down with tremendous force. Then a shadow, a massive dark shape, glided just below the surface. Murphy barely had time to react before the net snapped, the fish disappearing into the churning water. The captain stumbled back, his breath ragged as the shape slipped away into the depths. He didn't know it yet, but the terror had arrived, and it was only beginning. July 3rd, 1916, Beach Haven, New Jersey. The sun hung high in the sky, and the beaches of Beach Haven were alive with laughter, music, and the scent of salty air. Families in woolen bathing suits waded into the shallows, children splashed in the surf, and couples strolled along the boardwalk, indulging in ice cream and summer romance. Among the vacationers was Charles Van Sant, a 25-year-old Philadelphia native, tall and athletic, with a sharp wit and a love for the ocean. He and his family had come to Beach Haven to escape the city heat and enjoy the cool Atlantic breeze. He turned to his friend, Edward Nelson, who was lounging on the sand. "I can't resist any longer," Charles said, pulling off his shirt. "The water's calling me." Edward smirked. "Just don't swim too far out." "I heard the fishermen talking. Something about a strange catch this morning." Charles laughed. "Oh, come on. A little swim won't kill me." He ran toward the water, feeling the sand shift beneath his feet. The moment his body hit the waves, relief flooded him. The ocean was cool, crisp, perfect. He swam out, letting the waves carry him. For a while, all was peaceful. Then beneath him, the water shifted. A cold current wrapped around his legs. He treaded water, glancing back toward shore. He wasn't too far out. Surely no more than 50 yards. The lifeguard on duty, a young man named Alexander Ott, sat lazily on his wooden perch, barely paying attention. Then Charles felt something, a brush against his leg. He jerked his foot away, assuming it was seaweed. Then it came again, harder. Something strong bumped his thigh. His heart slammed against his ribs. He turned, scanning the water, nothing but endless blue, until he saw it. A dark fin slicing through the waves. Then pain. Searing, unimaginable pain tore through his left thigh. The water exploded in red. Charles screamed. On shore, people froze. A woman dropped her parasol. Then the lifeguard leapt from his stand. "Shark! Get out of the water!" Panic erupted. Swimmers scrambled, waves crashing as they rushed for the beach. Charles thrashed, his arms flailing. He tried to swim, but the thing had him. Teeth dug deeper. Edward, still on the sand, felt his stomach drop. Oh my God! A nearby lifeguard, George White, grabbed a rescue boat. They had to get to him. Charles fought, his vision blurred. The beast released him, only to strike again. Teeth sank into his side. The last thing he saw before slipping into darkness was the lifeboat coming toward him. The last thing he felt was the pull of the deep. July 4th, 1916. Beach Haven Infirmary. The room smelled of iodine and salt. The doctor's hands were red, blood red. Charles Van Sant lay on the operating table, his skin deathly pale. They had managed to pull him from the water, but his leg, His side, there was too much damage. His father, Dr. Eugene Van Sant, stood by, his face ashen. "Is he going to make it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The town doctor, Dr. Richard S. Gorgas, hesitated. He knew the truth, but how could he say it? I don't know," he admitted. "He's lost too much blood." Charles stirred, his lips parting. "Dad, it wasn't a fish." His father leaned closer. "What, son?" Charles' eyes fluttered. He swallowed hard. "It was huge, not a normal shark." His breath hitched, and then he was gone. Silence filled the room. Dr. Gorgas exhaled, the first death. But the sea was not finished. Not yet. July 6th, 1916, Spring Lake, New Jersey. The ocean breeze whispered through the grand verandas of the Essex and Sussex Hotel, a luxurious resort for New York and Philadelphia's wealthy elite. The 4th of July festivities had just ended, and vacationers now basked in the summer's golden warmth, oblivious to the horror that had unfolded 2 days prior in Beach Haven. Few people had heard about Charles Van Sant's gruesome death, and those who did dismissed it as an unfortunate accident, a fluke, a rare event. But the sea had not forgotten, and it was still hungry. A man with no fear. Charles Bruder, a 27-year-old Swiss hotel bellhop, wiped sweat from his brow as he carried a guest's luggage up the grand staircase. He had worked at the Essex and Sussex for 3 years, and although the job was grueling, he loved the ocean. And today, after his shift, he intended to enjoy it. "Taking a swim later, Bruder?" asked John Slater, a fellow hotel worker. Bruder grinned. "Of course, the sea is the best part of this place. You hear about the guy down in Beach Haven?" Slater lowered his voice. "Got bit by something. A shark, they say." Bruder chuckled. "Sharks don't attack people, John. That's just sailors' talk." Slater shrugged. "If you say so." Bruder wasn't worried. He was a strong swimmer. A red tide. By late afternoon, Bruder stripped down to his bathing suit and walked to the shoreline. The beach was nearly empty. Most guests preferred lounging by the hotel's saltwater pool rather than risk the open sea. He waded into the waves, feeling the cool water wrap around his legs. Then he swam farther, deeper. He loved the silence beneath the waves, the way the ocean held him in its embrace. Then something changed. The water shifted unnaturally. A shadow moved below him. He kicked harder, but suddenly, pain. A searing, monstrous bite clamped onto his right leg. Bruder screamed, his cry cutting through the still summer air. On shore, 2 women sunbathing sat up abruptly. What was that? Their eyes widened in horror. A dark mass twisted in the water, red swirling around it like ink in a glass of water. Bruder thrashed, the pain unbearable. Then, another bite. His entire leg was gone. His screams turned to gurgles as he sank into the blood-stained sea. A town in panic. Lifeguards rushed into the water, their boats cutting through the surf. One of them, Chris Anderson, reached Bruder just as his body began to go limp. "Oh God, his legs!" Anderson cried. Bruder's face was pale, his lips trembling. Don't let me die." They pulled him into the boat, blood pooling at the bottom. Back on shore, people screamed. Some ran for the hotel, others stood frozen, watching as the ocean turned crimson. Bruder's body twitched as he gasped, his life draining into the sand. A doctor rushed to his side. "Stay with us, son." Bruder tried to speak, but his body gave one last violent shudder, and then he was gone. Chris Anderson stepped back, his hands trembling. The crowd murmured in horror. Then a young boy, no older than 7, whispered what everyone feared. "There's a monster in the water." And this time, no one laughed. July 7th, 1916, Spring Lake, New Jersey. The next morning, the town was in chaos. News of Charles Bruder's horrific death spread like wildfire. Unlike the first attack in Beach Haven, this one had witnesses. Dozens of people had seen the blood, heard the screams, and now they wanted answers. A meeting of fear. In the Spring Lake Town Hall, a group of fishermen, hotel owners, and town officials gathered in a heated debate. "This is madness," roared Mayor George Barnett, slamming his fist on the table. "2 attacks in a week, it's going to ruin us." "Ruin us," shouted Captain William Tate, a veteran fisherman. "People are dying. We need to close the beaches before more are killed." Barnett shook his head. "We can't just shut down Spring Lake in the middle of summer. We need proof this is an actual threat and not some coincidence." "Coincidence?" Tate spat. "That man's leg was bitten clean off. I've fished these waters for 30 years and I've never seen a shark attack like this." A voice spoke from the corner. Dr. Charles Lucas, a marine biologist from the American Museum of Natural History, cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, what we're dealing with is something unusual. Sharks don't typically attack humans, let alone twice in a row." Tate scoffed. "Then what do you think happened? A sea serpent?" Dr. Lucas leaned forward. "There's only one logical answer: a rogue shark, a predator that has learned to see humans as food." Silence filled the room. Mayor Barnett sighed. "If this is true, then we have a problem. A big one." The hunt begins. By afternoon, boats filled with armed fishermen set out to sea. They carried rifles, harpoons, and even dynamite. They were going to kill whatever was out there. Captain Tate stood at the bow of his boat, the Abigail, scanning the water. "I don't like this," muttered First Mate Joe Hargrove. "Something about this whole thing feels wrong." Tate exhaled. "I don't care if it's wrong, Joe. I just want it dead." They sailed deeper into the Atlantic, the waves eerily calm. The hunt had begun, but the hunters didn't know they were being hunted too. July 12th, 1916, Matawan, New Jersey. The town of Matawan sat nestled inland, miles from the open ocean, where the Matawan Creek cut through the marshy countryside like a winding vein of water. Here, far from the sandy beaches and salty breezes, no one feared the sea. The people of Matawan prided themselves on their simple life, farming, fishing, and running small shops. The war in Europe felt like a distant nightmare, and the idea of a shark, a creature of the deep sea, lurking in their freshwater creek. Absurd. But something was coming, something no one expected. A shark in the creek. The Matawan General Store was the heart of town gossip. That morning, Watson Fisher, the 42-year-old storekeeper, stood behind the counter, listening as the usual crowd of men sipped coffee and debated the rumors from the coast. "I'm telling you, something's killing people out there," said Henry Stillwell, a retired fisherman. "2 men bitten to shreds. Some folks say it's a damn sea monster." "Bah!" scoffed Reverend Paul McGraw, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "The Lord made no monster like that. Just big fish, same as always." Then Lester Stillwell, Henry's 11-year-old nephew, ran in from the street, breathless and wide-eyed. "Mr. Fisher, Mr. Fisher, we saw something in the creek." Fisher frowned. "What are you talking about, boy?" Lester gulped down air. "A fish, a big one. It was swimming near the docks." Henry chuckled. Now, son. Probably just a big carp. They get mighty big this time of year." "No!" Lester shook his head wildly. "It was different. It had a fin." Silence settled over the store. Then Fisher muttered, "That's impossible." But it wasn't. The boys who played too close by noon, a group of local boys, had gathered by Wyckoff Dock, a wooden pier jutting into the creek. The summer heat shimmered over the water as they laughed, daring each other to jump in. Among them were Lester Stillwell, 11, skinny, bright-eyed, and always looking for adventure. Stanley Fisher, 24, a respected tailor and local athlete, watching the kids from the shore. Albert O'Hara, 14, Joseph Dunn, 12, and a few others. The boys splashed and wrestled in the murky water, kicking up mud. Then Lester stopped laughing. Something moved beneath him, a dark shape, a fin, a shadow growing bigger. Then the water exploded. A huge torpedo-like body shot forward. Teeth sank into Lester's small frame. His scream was cut short as he was pulled under. For a second, the water was still. Then, red bubbles surfaced. The boys froze in horror. Albert O'Hara screamed, "Lester's gone!" The water churned violently. Lester's body broke the surface for an instant. His face twisted in terror before the shark jerked him back down. Stanley Fisher raced forward. "My God!" he shouted. "It's a shark!" The boys on shore were screaming, pointing, crying. Stanley didn't hesitate. He dived into the bloodied creek. A hero's final act. Stanley Fisher was strong. He had pulled drowning men from the water before, but he had never fought a shark. He swam blindly into the red depths, reaching out. Then his hands found Lester. He yanked the boy toward the surface, gasping, kicking desperately. For a moment, he thought they had a chance. Then the force hit him like a train. A jaw clamped onto his thigh. The pain was blinding. Stanley gasped, his lungs burning, his grip slipping. The shark thrashed violently, yanking him sideways. He felt his flesh tear. On shore, people watched in horror as the water boiled with movement. Then Stanley surfaced. "Help!" he cried. His leg was nearly severed. Men on the dock grabbed him, dragging him out of the water. His body was drenched in blood. And Lester was gone. The town in shock. Stanley Fisher bled out in Matawan Small Hospital. He fought for 3 agonizing hours, but the wounds were too severe. Before he died, his last words were whispered to his mother. "I tried to save him, but it took us both." That night, the town held a candlelit vigil for Lester and Stanley. The streets were quiet. Mothers kept their children inside, and for the first time, they feared the creek, because something had come up from the deep, and it had tasted blood. July 13th, 1916, Matawan, New Jersey. The 3rd and 4th deaths in less than 2 weeks. The town of Matawan was in hysteria. The beaches were empty. Fishermen refused to go out, and Mayor George Thompson had no choice. He declared, "We must kill the beast." The biggest shark hunt in American history was about to begin. The hunt begins. Boats lined the creek and ocean, armed with dynamite rifles, harpoons, steel nets. Every fisherman, sailor, and hunter in the area was out for blood, but what they didn't know was that the shark was still hunting too, and it wasn't done yet. July 14th, 1916, Cliffwood Beach, New Jersey. The shark had tasted human flesh, and it wanted more. A fisherman's warning. In the small fishing village of Cliffwood Beach, just a few miles from Matawan Creek, Harry Brenner stood on the shore, watching the waves. A seasoned fisherman with skin like worn leather, he had been at sea for 40 years. And something felt wrong. The water was too still. The gulls were gone. Even the fish seemed to have disappeared. Then he saw it, a dark shadow gliding beneath the surface. His breath hitched. It was back. "God, help us," he whispered. The final victim. Just down the shore, Joseph Dunn, a 14-year-old boy, was playing with his friends in the shallows. Unlike the creek attack, this was saltwater, open ocean. No unexpected danger here. Joseph splashed, laughing, until his foot brushed something rough. He froze. Then pain. A lightning bolt of agony shot up his leg as jaws clamped down, crushing bone. He screamed. His friends rushed to shore, shouting for help. On the docks, Harry Brenner grabbed a harpoon and ran toward the water. Joseph thrashed, kicking, but the shark wouldn't let go. Then, more hands. Men from the dock leapt in, punching, grabbing, trying to save him. One of them, Michael Doolan, brought down a wooden oar on the beast's snout. Whack! Whack! The shark released Joseph, but only for a moment. Then it lunged again. But this time, the men dragged Joseph to shore before it could finish him off. Blood poured from the boy's mangled leg. "We need a doctor!" someone screamed. A horse-drawn wagon raced toward town, Joseph barely conscious as he bled through the bandages. The rogue shark had struck again, and now America had enough. July 15th, 1916, the New Jersey coast. The United States was in chaos. Newspapers called it the Jersey Man-Eater, the Devil Shark, the Summer of Blood. The attacks were no longer just local news. They were national. People in New York and Philadelphia refused to go near the water. Some boarded up their beachfront homes. And in Washington, D.C., President Woodrow Wilson ordered a federal response. The government was hunting a shark, the war against the sea. On July 15th, hundreds of men set out from docks along the Jersey shore. Among them, Captain Thomas Cottrell, a seasoned fisherman who had seen the shark in Matawan, but no one believed him. Dr. Frederick Lucas, a marine biologist determined to prove that sharks could attack humans. William Bill McElroy, a bounty hunter hired by local businessmen to kill the beast by any means necessary. Armed with rifles, harpoons, dynamite, and steel nets, they scoured the creeks, inlets, and open sea. Every dark shadow in the water was a target. The monster is found on July 17th. A boat off Raritan Bay spotted something. A large, dark figure glided near the surface, a massive shark. Captain Cottrell grabbed his rifle. Steady! The men tensed. Then, the fin broke the water. Fire! Gunshots rang out. Harpoons flew. The water boiled as the shark thrashed violently. Then, a final shudder, and then, silence. The monster was dead. Or so they thought. July 18th, 1916, Harlem, New York City. The body of the shark was transported to a dockside warehouse in Harlem. There, Dr. Lucas and his team cut it open. Inside the stomach, they found bones, flesh, pieces of human clothing. The proof was undeniable. This shark, whatever it was, had been responsible for the worst shark attacks in American history. But what kind of shark was it? Theories spread like wildfire. A great white? Too aggressive. A bull shark? Known to swim in fresh water? Something else entirely? To this day, no one knows for sure. What was certain was this: the Jersey shore would never be the same again. Summer 1917, the Atlantic Ocean. A year had passed. The beaches reopened. People returned to the water. But something had changed. Even now, when the waves are still and the wind is quiet, some swimmers swear they feel something. A brush against their legs, a shadow beneath them, a presence that should not be there. Because in the end, the ocean keeps its own secrets, and sometimes the monsters never truly leave.